Thank you, everyone, for coming. My name is Brian Hamilton. I'm a member, as also Judy is, of our steering committee for the Nevada County Community Forums. We decided to host these discussions, and this is, I'm not sure the exact number, the 8th maybe, of an ongoing series, monthly, where we talk about issues that are important to our community that maybe need a little bit more of a deep dive than what we've been able to present so far. And with that, I want to thank both Mike Woodman and Sam Vandell for joining me. These two are absolute experts on transportation in our area. Sam has been the project manager for the past 5 years for District 3, and before that he was an engineer of all sorts with Caltrans, and so he's been in his role for quite some time. And then Mike Woodman has been our executive director of Nevada County Transportation Commission for the past 3 years, and prior to that he was our deputy executive director for 23?
No, for like 3 years, and then transportation planner for deputy executive director for 3 years, and then prior to that I was transportation planner for the commission.
They've both been in the community for a long time. They're very familiar with Highway 49, the issues that it presents, and also the lives that it has claimed. And with that, I want to kind of just get into a brief history, at least my understanding of Highway 49. I've been in the community for over 20 years now. I drive that road multiple times daily. I'm among those who sit at the intersections of our road and wait for a certain point to have enough time to get out on the road as the cars crest the hill and things like that we all kind of develop our own system to make sure we're getting on the road safely. And that was something I really pumped into my daughters as they began to drive, because it was something that terrified me. Back in 2005, I was city editor of the Union newspaper, and through the course of that year, we learned and just started noticing a rash of fatal accidents. And I believe at one point in 2005, there were 11 people who died between Grass Valley and Auburn on Highway 49. Depending on different stretches, you can come up with different numbers. So we really started to ask a lot of questions about that. And there was already a group created, Citizens Concerned for Highway 49 Safety. I think Bruce and Deborah Jones had started that. There were a lot of people who had their own personal experience on the highway and wanted to advocate for safety. With that, the paper, the union got involved. We started having larger discussions, community meetings, and what was the result of that wasn't a lot of construction at that time, but there was some work done, striping, rumble strips, increased CHP patrol. And what was really impressive to see that over the next 5 years, through raised awareness, through the community coming together, there were still 11 to 12 people who died, but it was over the course of 5 years as opposed to one. And it was really impressive to me to see the impact we can make locally when we're paying attention. And so with that, I was going to ask you guys to kind of just get into this right away. What makes Highway 49 such a dangerous drive? Mike, want to start?
I think one of the biggest factors, improving operations and safety on State Route 49 have been a top priority of the Nevada County Transportation Commission dating back to the early 90s. Part of the impetus for that, kind of in the early 80s, Nevada County's population nearly doubled. And then since then, going into the early 2000s, population growth has slowed over that point of time. But that population increase, the increase in volumes on the highway, and then just the design of the highway, where originally, it was a sleepy 2-lane rural highway, and you have a lot of driveways or ingresses and egresses onto the highway. And when you have that condition and volumes increase and speeds increase, you then have the issue with, folks trying to enter and exit the highway, and it creates high-speed, low-speed conflicts. So I think that's really the biggest challenge, and one that, over time through smaller operational projects that Caltrans has done, and then some of the larger improvement projects that the commission in coordination with Caltrans has funded can address. But I'll let Sam answer that if there's anything else to add.
Well, and with that type of highway, as the population grows, that you have more and more volumes of traffic, and you have these ingresses and egresses taking place. That sight distance that those people need to get onto and off of the highway is significant. I mean, you have to be able to see the vehicles, judge their speed, to be able to get in and merge on. And sometimes you're crossing over the oncoming lane to go in the other direction as well. So you're not only judging two different through lanes to do that. And so you have to have the sight distance and the topography as well. The topography, your hills and things that restrict your horizontal sight distance, and then vertically as well. As you're coming over a crest curve, you can't see on that other side. Well, you have those ingresses coming on the other side as well. So as you're coming over the top of the hill, you don't see them, or they don't see you. And so that's definitely makes it a challenge and a safety issue.
And clearly, I mean, Caltrans you guys have a multimodal corridor plan. It's a very large plan. It's probably encompasses all of this as well as other projects that will come down the road. So it's been identified as a priority, right? I mean, Caltrans certainly and the state commission certainly see the need for improvements. But that doesn't always mean the money follows right away. Can maybe one of you talk about a little bit about, we understand a little bit about maybe what determines the need and identify the projects being necessary, and then also how does the funding follow, or how do you go get the funding?
Yeah, and transportation funding in California is fairly complicated. There's multiple funding sources, and they all tend to be siloed towards addressing specific things rather than being available to address multiple needs. So that's one challenge. And then in terms of identifying these projects, it's really monitoring the accidents, the injury accidents, the fatalities, identifying hot spots. If there are enough of them, it'll actually trigger a state-controlled Caltrans safety funding. A lot of times on our rural highways, we're having serious injury accidents and fatalities, but it's not triggering that safety funding. And we don't want to wait to have to trigger that safety funding. So that's, for example, the Bar Meadows Road project. The Transportation Commission, we were having a number of fatalities and serious injuries, folks trying to enter the highway like we were just talking about, identified the improvement, and then identified funding. Nevada County Transportation Commission, one of the biggest challenges for a rural county like Nevada is our main highway funding source is called the State Transportation Improvement Program. And the formula that determines how much each county gets is based on essentially population is the key calculation, and then center lane highway miles. And so as you can imagine, Los Angeles and the Bay Area with their population receive the lion's share of that funding. For Nevada County, for example, every 2 years we get approximately $4 to $5 million. And in the big scheme of trying to do a highway project that may be 50 to 70 plus million dollars, that's a big lift. That money does allow us to fund the project development pieces, the project approval, environmental documentation, the design, and often the right-of-way. But then when it comes to funding the construction piece of the project, that's where the real challenge is. And we always say, hey, we have $5 million that we can put towards this, or if we save up our formula shares for multiple years, we have a little bit more. And then we're really chasing state grants, federal grants, seeking partnerships through the Interregional Improvement Program with Caltrans. So that's the biggest challenge, and that's part of the reason for the delay in seeing the improvements on State Route 49 is that funding challenge. And recently we've been successful getting some grant funding. That's just why we're here today to talk about the improvements that are coming. But it's definitely a challenge. And when we had those community meetings back in 2007 with Citizens for Highway 49 Safety, 300 plus citizens demanding something be done to state officials and local officials, that's where we feel their frustration, the sense of urgency. We have it too, but then trying to relay the funding challenges, and that's why they want improvements now but it takes longer because it is such a challenge to get the funding for these type of larger projects.
And you've talked about, we talked previously about this, there's more, or there's new monies available. It's not just the siloed safety project type of things, but climate money is available. And that was a big driver in making some of these next projects available, including the one at McKnight Way.
Yeah, over time there's different propositions or Senate bills that increase funding for transportation, and then it creates specific grant programs out of that. And so right now there's several grant programs that fit some of the projects that we're trying to do on State Route 49, as well as some federal funding that came out of the recent authorization of the Federal Transportation Funding Bill to address climate change and especially kind of protecting communities that are threatened due to things such as wildfire and those kind of things. So just in the last probably 5 years, there's kind of been an opportunity that we haven't had in quite a while. And we've been working tirelessly, preparing and submitting grants, and recently, happy to say we were successful in getting some of those approved.
Yeah, certainly funding is definitely a huge challenge for the state, for sure. We have different pots of money, as Mike mentioned, and we have different program codes. And it's not just a big pot of money, as Mike is saying, that you sprinkle a little bit here or there as demand is. You have to fund certain different types of projects, and safety is definitely one of them. Safety is a big pot of money that we have. And so on Mike's project here on 4170 from LeBar, that's the project number, sorry, from LeBar up to McKnight Way, Mike really kicked that one off with his project, with his local shares of funding to at least start the project. We didn't have construction funding for it at that point in time, but Mike was like, we need to get this moving. So he got his local share of money, put it in, and at least allowed us to start with getting the environmental document. And then with that, we started looking into the design phase and into the right-of-way phase. But with that said, without construction funding, the state went through and looked and see if there was a pot of money that we could use for safety as not a reactionary safety program, but more of a proactive safety program to get funds to pay for a portion of it. And we identified some out of our SHOP program that we were able to put forward onto his section. So we're combining our state shares of SHOP with his local regional transportation improvement program shares to complete the project. So it's definitely a partnership. I have to, hats off to Mike. The state came in, we got, at least identified our portion that we could use with safety and operations to improve it. Mike still didn't have his. Mike had applied for multiple different grants. There's multiple different funding sources now coming available. 20, 25 years ago, there may have been a handful. Now there's probably 20, 30 plus different pots of money, and they're all very competitive. You're competing against all over the state typically for this. And so Mike applied for multiple different ones and finally got, I guess, really good at writing and what was significant for that, and was able to provide that in his grant applications, and got awarded different grants, multiple different grants to get that funding. So really happy to partner with him. He's really a great partner to work with, and awesome.
So I'm hearing is that when we're all sitting in traffic at these areas next year, we can just say, thanks, Mike. Yeah. But no, actually, as someone who lives on Highway 49 and travels as much as I do, thanks, Mike. I mean, it's really important that we're making this work happen, and obviously with these new avenues for revenue to help fund it, that's good news. And if you want to talk a little bit about what that project is going to do, and especially in terms of helping to evacuate if that's necessary.
Yeah, and Sam mentioned that Caltrans District 3 had secured a State Highway Operations Protection Program, that's SHOP, funding for the northbound improvements. And that really was the impetus. It didn't make sense to fund the northbound improvements and then have to come back at some point in the future and do the southbound improvements. The more you delay these things, the cost increases, and you save money by combining them. So that really gave us the push to we knew the construction schedule for the northbound improvements, which were slated to start in 25, 26, and we had to get the southbound. So we got the southbound improvements secured. And so what the project does, northbound, it'll include a truck climbing lane northbound from LeBar Meadows Road. Essentially, you'll have 2 lanes connecting to the Golden Center Freeway. It'll put in a 16-foot two-way center left turn lane. It'll also install right turn pockets at Smith Road, Crestview Road, Wellswood Way, and Bethel Church Way to allow safer egress from the highway. And then on the northbound side, it'll also put in, on the southbound side, it'll put in a southbound truck climbing lane and then shoulders on both sides of the highway. And one of the important things when we did the Nevada County Extreme Climate Event Mobility Adaptation Plan, looking at impacts of climate change on the transportation system, how to make it more resilient. One of the things, working with our first responders, CHP, CAL FIRE, they identified, and we already knew this, but identified the southbound merge point just south of McKnight Way, where the highway goes from 2 lanes down to 1. You see it in peak hour conditions, the congestion backs up, but also, you see what happens when an I-80 emergency detour happens and they detour traffic from I-80 down State Route 20 to 49 back down to I-80. And when you put that volume into that merge point, the highway completely breaks down. So in terms of evacuation, knowing that majority of Nevada County is in the CAL FIRE high wildfire risk category, and knowing that that's an evacuation impediment, that was also one of the impetuses of getting that improved. And also that was one of the hot spots where we had multiple rear-end collisions and sideswipe collisions. So that's kind of the overview of the project that we're going to be constructing, and the construction schedule for that is 25, 26 if everything stays on schedule. And then we have looked at potentially funding a third phase of that project in the future. We don't have any funding for it. If there is a need, we'll monitor it. If we have an issue that pops up like crossover accidents, head-on accidents, I really think this improvement with the wider 2-way turn lane, providing that buffer between the traffic, hopefully will reduce that and it won't be a risk. But if we see something like that happening, we can then come in and put in a median barrier. And then if we need to, there's potential for 2 access-controlled intersections and collect some of the egresses into a frontage road that would bring them to either a signalized or roundabout potentially at that location. But those are longer-term improvements that we'll monitor the operations and the safety and see what's warranted.
What does that do as far as if you're explaining how does that help evacuating a community? I understand just more room, but I mean allowing 2 lanes in both directions or 4 lanes in all same direction, or I mean what kind of assistance does that provide in just making it wider?
It'll definitely help because it eliminates a bottleneck, and when you combine that proposed improvement with the previous LeBar Meadows improvement, you have 2 lanes all the way down. You technically have the shoulder, but then south of that, just south of the LeBar Meadows Road project, then you get into the issues again where we're going from 2 lane down to 1 lane to 2 lane. And so that's where the other planned project for State Route 49 that we got the climate adaptation funding from the California Transportation Commission, that project proposes to add a 12-foot structurally engineered southbound shoulder. And when I say structurally engineered, it's designed to handle the weight of the cars to be drivable. And then also a center two-way left turn lane, and then a northbound 8-foot shoulder with, the thought that the primary evacuation would be southbound movement, evacuating main populations of Grass Valley, Nevada City, and the surrounding areas.
And that's Ponderosa Pines all the way down to Gombe?
Yeah, Ponderosa Pines Way, just north of Alta Sierra, down to Wolf Combi. And so when you have both of the improvements completed conceptually in a major evacuation event, you then could contraflow traffic. You could use the structurally engineered shoulder and the center two-way left turn lane and have a higher volume of cars, moving cars, quicker out of the danger zone or the evacuation area. And so that's the concept. It won't solve our issue. It all depends on the location of the fire. If it's a significant wind event, the rate of spread, all those things have to be taken into account. But anything we can do to eliminate some of those pinch points that would restrict movement during an evacuation and allow for more vehicles to exit while still allowing for our emergency first responders to have enough room and safe access to come in to assist and help us fight the fire are critical.
So when we're all hearing all this work coming, what kind of time frames? I mean, you said 25, 26, 2 full years to complete each one of these projects, or?
Essentially, most construction projects of this nature take about 2 years to complete, and both of them are scheduled to start just around the same time. One might lag a little bit behind, but it'll
Correct.
be happening about in the same time frame.
Typically on something this size, though, with this kind of, you're adding a 12-foot lane in each direction, a 14-foot two-way left turn lane and standard shoulders. That's a lot of earthwork and a lot of movement and a lot of traffic handling for traffic. We're trying to keep 3 lanes open during construction for this to make sure we keep the traffic moving for sure. But typically this would be at least the size of a 3-year construction period. And so, yeah, 25, 26, probably earthwork moving probably in the summer of 26 if the current schedule continues. The next project would probably start maybe a year to 2 years behind that one. So definitely is going to be a lot of construction on Highway 49. There'll be have to have some cooperation clauses between the contractors as each one is being, because one's probably going to be getting finished in 1 year and then the other one's just starting. So you're definitely going to have cooperation clauses and things between the 2 contractors that are, winning those 2 contracts to build those projects.
Yeah, and Sam knows this better than I do, but once you get the construction contractor on board, they come up with the traffic management plan and what work's going to happen at night to try to alleviate the impacts on the roadway. The other thing that they take into account is being able to construct the project but leave enough lanes open in the event of an evacuation. And then also there's procedures that go into place if a fire pops up and there's an evacuation. The contractors know how to respond. And so I don't know if you want to touch on that,
there's a
Sam.
response plan that is developed as part of the contract. You guys may have seen or witnessed some of that as we had the fire a couple years ago up in Colfax.
The river fire.
The river fire on by Colfax off of 174. We had the 174 safety project widening and realignment going on at that time. The coordination between the contractor and first responders. The contractor was contacted by CAL FIRE immediately. They worked with Caltrans to get all lanes open for everybody to be able to transgress down 174. So yeah, those plans are significant, and we have to have those in place. And that's part of our contracts. They have to have those plans developed and ready to go, because you just don't know when something emergency, not just the fires, but any sort of emergency that goes on, they need to be able to access and move through the projects. The same way we had a similar plan on our mega project up on Highway 20 as well during that construction time period. So absolutely, you have to coordinate and make sure CAL FIRE, local sheriffs, local fire departments, all have, communications and list of phone numbers of contractors as well as Caltrans staff.
Yeah, and just one thing, I just want to be clear when we talk about, wildfires and evacuation, Nevada County Office of Emergency Services and the Nevada County Sheriff are the lead agencies in regards to evacuation and evacuation planning. The Nevada County Transportation Commission plays a role in that. We coordinate with those agencies. We fund some studies and we participate in their evacuation studies. And then really, where the commission plays a key role is if there's improvements on the major regional roadways or the state highways, we're the agency that comes in to try to fund the improvements and secure the funding.
It's interesting you're bringing up the river fire, because on the other side of the river fire, where the fire did not go, which I thought was headed to the west, which is on my side of the county, I was watching that really closely. And then as they were evacuating on 49, there were 2 to 3 crashes. I don't know if people remember that, but that was stopping traffic. And when people are trying to get out, and then you have these added hurdles, so to speak, obstacles, it can be really a dilemma for the sheriff. And she came, Sheriff Moon came and talked to us, I think it was in August or September, about evacuating Nevada County and the challenges that they face. And this example on 49 heading south, trying to get everybody out, the fact that it'd be wider, the fact that there'd be more opportunity to control traffic, to me, it only sounds like a positive thing.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, as you guys are doing this work and the Omega project, Highway 174, we're not naive to think that everybody was in favor of the stuff happening. Change is hard, we know that, and it's difficult. From my own personal perspective of driving 174 today and from driving the Omega Curves project, where I'm not down in the canyon looking out for black ice as I go around those hairpin turns, to me that these are positive improvements. I know that not everyone agrees with that, but how do you deal with that? I mean, because you guys are coming up with the need, you're coming up with the funding, you're coming up with the design, the plan. Mm-hmm. How do you deal with the community if they're not on board?
Yeah, well, I think, it's really rare that you have 100% buy-in on any of these projects. Everybody has a different opinion. And then 2, some of these projects impact property owners. And so there's concerns on that level as well. For the State Route 174 safety project, there was a kind of a coalition of residents from that corridor. The Nevada County Transportation Commission tried to play a role in kind of coordinating the communication between the Caltrans team and those residents. We'd have meetings at our office, discuss their issues, go over plans. And, Caltrans tried to address a lot of the issues that they brought up. They weren't able to address all of them. But I think, in the end, I think the improvement maybe wasn't where they had the fears of what it was going to be. I think when it was completed, I think a lot of people said, oh, well, this isn't quite as bad as we anticipated. But then again, it depends. If you personally were impacted by the improvement,
sure.
You probably have a different perspective.
A lot of times that's the case. It's our own personal experience that drives a lot of that. To go through some of these projects, this one is not in our county, the next project with Placer County. And one thing I learned through this, I think I referred to it in a story as it was now scheduled to start construction this year. Well, it's entering what is known as the construction phase,
Correct.
Which is not putting the shovel on the ground and getting going. So
Yes.
Maybe talk about that a little bit, Sam, as far as like this project that's coming, the Rinzen Road, Lone Star Road. They're going to plan for roundabouts on both of those with a center median.
Correct.
All the way between the two.
Yes, that project is a project that was a safety project identified through a number of cross-median collisions, actually. And so with that being triggered, we looked at how to reduce, the number and the severity of those.
A little bit higher.
And so the median barrier was to prevent those. But with that being said, you have to, you'll have out of direction traffic, right? And so with out of direction traffic, because you won't be able to access the other side for people ingressing or egressing rather. And so you have to provide a turning movement for those people to legally turn around. If you going, say if you're going, want to access from the northbound direction side to go southbound, so you take a right to travel up, your next nearest legal U-turn movement was like 3 miles away, 3 miles north. So we had to look at improving those intersections on either side of the median barrier. So that's where we looked at evaluated turn signals. We evaluated the roundabouts, J-turns. We had a number of alternatives we reviewed and provided analysis to come up with the best solution. We did, with the team and our analysis, we determined the roundabouts were suitable for multiple reasons, for safety as well. We want to, roundabouts are now considered traffic calming measures as well, because we do know that the speeds on 49 are very significant as well. So this will help slow the average speed through that area as well. But providing those people that are that live in that section where that median barrier is going up, they have, needed to provide them with access to the other side without having to travel, 3 miles up to the nearest legal U-turn and then 3 miles back to get to where they would have come on before the median barrier. And so that was the same way on the other end. And so that project has been what we call in construction phase. And when we say in construction phase, that means the contractor has been selected and come on board. There's many things that sometimes have to happen before the actual earth can actually be starting and the construction to start. And a lot of times utilities play a key role into that. Those utilities have to be removed and relocated so you're not disrupting service to, all the communities that they're supplying. So utility relocations are going to take up to, I think the deadline for their relocation is August 1st. So those relocations will be completed by then, and then after that point, the contractor will start his work. Probably because of the time frame that he'll have left in what we call the construction season, meaning that there are activities in construction, paving, and other activities that are dependent on weather, temperatures, and dry conditions, things along those lines. Typically, we have what we call a rainy season that starts mid-October to about April. So. And typically most projects go into what we call winter suspension because the contractor can't work on the controlling operation, the one that they need to do to get the project completed. So they will probably start doing minor work, and then next year we'll start the majority of the actual earthwork itself.
Could I?
Kind of long-winded.
No. We're moving along. I was just going to say we're moving along at a nice clip because I was going to ask you, for those of us who are very familiar with roundabouts, I mean, I just drove through one getting here today, right? Mm-hmm. Can you talk about, you're cruising along at 60, 65, whatever the speed limit is on 49, and you come up to a roundabout. What are people going to be expecting? Because, I mean, it's not going to be this little tight one here or the one down at Idaho, Maryland. I mean, these are large ones. Well, so talk a little bit about what the driver's going to experience going into something like that.
You do have to design those for the type of facility and the vehicles that are operating on that facility. So in this case, down there, we call it a 5-lane facility, but it's 2 lanes in each direction with 65 mile an hour posted speed limit. Well, you have trucks that are going to have trucks with trailers, cars with trailers are going to have to make that U-turn movement or be able to get through there, first responders, things along those lines. So we designed those roundabouts with a large enough radius that those vehicles can traverse those roundabouts at the speed that they're designed for. And so in this case, a California legal truck size or a fire engine, we designed it so those vehicles can traverse those. And as you approach both of those roundabouts, To alert drivers, there's obviously going to be multiple signage packages that are placed out there for drivers to alert drivers, but also they have what they call chicanes, which slightly change the direction of the roadway before you enter into the roundabout to help give obviously a change that they're going to have to make to alert the drivers that this roundabout or something is coming. So these chicanes also help alert the driver physically that he's having to turn, plus you have the sign packages that are going to be posted for them visually to be able to see to come up, knowing that they will have to be slowing down.
And those will be 2-lane roundabouts, and like a comparative example for Nevada County would be the roundabouts up on State Route 89 right off of the I-80 interchange in the town of Truckee.
Yes, they will be 2-lane roundabouts. That's correct. And with, obviously when you have roundabouts along those lines, you'll have off tracking on big trucks, their wheels and stuff. So we'll have a larger truck apron and stuff like that for the outside, as well as the inside for off tracking of larger vehicles. So yeah, they will be 2-lane roundabouts.
Yeah, and from the Transportation Commission perspective, it's Placer County, it's 49 still, our highway, our interregional highway, and we'll be watching with great interest to see how, that implementation of that improvement on the corridor, how it works, how it operates, and, how folks respond to it. So it'll be interesting.
Make no mistake. I mean, the corridor plan is calling for 2 lanes in both directions all the way between Grass Valley and Auburn eventually, correct?
Eventually, correct.
Yeah. So having the ability to watch what's going on in Placer County, I imagine is of great value to you guys as you
Yes.
figure out how you're going to do that up here.
Yeah, especially the proposed 2 intersection operational improvements that potentially be coming on in the last phase of Mike's project from LeBar up to McKnight. He can have actual evidence and data on how those are performing in Placer County, on what decisions may impact those that he's trying to implement in that last phase.
One of the main concerns that we hear a lot when we talk about widening or adding a lane is increased speeds. People think that because there's a fast lane now and a slow lane that everybody's just going to be racing. Is that what you typically see? I mean, do you see concerns over increased speeds when you are adding lanes?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a common concern that we do see. Right now on State Route 49, in a lot of the segments, there's inadequate or varying widths of shoulder, I should say, where it's not wide enough for CHP to do enforcement and pull over cars. Once we have the project and we have the standard shoulders, the full length, CHP will be able to do enforcement on the whole section. One other thing that the Nevada County Transportation Commission has been looking into is pursuing legislation that will increase Caltrans flexibility to reduce the speed limits. Right now, the current Street Highway Vehicle Code allows Caltrans the flexibility to reduce the speed limit based on engineering judgment by 5 miles per hour. We're considering adjusting that flexibility to give them the ability to adjust it up to 10 miles per hour lower. That way, if you did an improvement like on State Route 49 that would typically be cited as a 65 mile per hour facility, we would like to keep that at 55, just given the ingresses, egresses. We don't want to increase the speed, and so we're going to pursue some legislation to see if we can get that flexibility into state law.
Caltrans in favor of that, I would imagine.
I'm not sure Sam can speak to that politically.
A
little bit of a conflict probably.
But I do know Caltrans is looking at similar ways. They have the same concerns about, we need to, if we're trying to really get to 0 fatalities across the state on our state highways, speeds need to be one of the things that we look at. So they're exploring options as well, but we don't necessarily want to wait. We would rather move ahead and get something in place.
Well, and again, as I mentioned, for some of the reasons that were selected for Placer County, those roundabouts, the roundabouts are a way of slowing vehicles down through there. So it definitely calms and slows vehicles down through there as well. It's like anytime, look at Highway 20 now, right? Everybody was concerned about, you straighten out those curves. Are people traveling faster? Certainly right now, it takes a couple years for traffic to like normalize once the project's completed. At that time, we go in and do a speed survey and adjust the speed limit accordingly based on that survey. But certainly it takes a few years for traffic to, normalize through the project and how they're traveling through that section. But I do know that the project that Mike has, it's significantly going to improve safety along that corridor. I mean, with the wider shoulders, the sight distance for people ingressing and egressing off of Highway 49, the two-way left turn lane, so people can actually go into that two-way left turn lane if they're accessing the other direction. They can pull and stop. They don't have to go all the way across, right? Or that slower vehicle, if they're turning, say, left, they can pull into there so they're not stopped in that fast lane or the number one lane and having vehicles run up behind them. That gives them a way to get out of that through lane traffic. As well as adding the truck bound lanes, you have slower moving vehicles that provide conflict points, and so now you're eliminating those conflict points and making traffic and operations, safer by doing so.
The truck climbing lane, I mean, we have one that's been added north of Combie on 49. I'm not sure how long ago that was. Maybe a couple of years ago now. But that seems to have taken a lot of pressure off the people sitting there waiting to turn right on red and get up the hill. And it seems to keep things moving a little bit.
Right, it does. It eliminates a lot of the conflicts between the slower moving vehicles as they're trying to get up, on those grades. Definitely makes it much safer to separate out the vehicles that are traveling and can maintain that speed in the number one lane and allowing those others to move over. So you can't make everybody move over, as we all know. So driving habits definitely play a significant role in safety. So driving habits, as everybody travels, we all get frustrated with travelers that we're using the roads with and their etiquette and what they do. So that's part of the reason as well. Nowadays there's more and more distractions that, cell phones and other things that people, are distracted with. And so it definitely makes it a challenge, and as well as, courtesy. Courtesy is something that, a lot of drivers don't practice, moving over for a faster moving, vehicle and not creating a conflict or an issue. So definitely plays a part and role, our society in general as a whole.
When you talk about courtesy, it takes me back to 2005 when the community got so involved and was, I think you were saying demanded some action. And with I think they call it, I'm not sure the term they use, but really a lot of enforcement from CHP. I mentioned that in the story leading into this, just a couple thousand more tickets written after they decided to do that. Saturation, I think, enforcement.
Well, true, and the wider shoulders are going to allow CHP to have enforcement areas that they can pull off and monitor speeds of traffic as well. So,
but I think it just kind of also was, with community awareness, it's people kind of like looking out for each other. Hey, we're all driving it.
Right.
And it used to drive me nuts. It still does, but I don't see it as much. When we go from 2 lanes to 1, all those bottlenecks all the way up, and there's always that one person, whoever you are, who's got to get in front of me. And guess what? You're going to be there the rest of the way to Grass Valley. You didn't need to risk my life and my kids. But it is etiquette. It is courtesy. It is looking out for each other's in a lot of ways, especially when you have a 2-lane highway. So until we get this all done, let's all just be friendly and make sure we're not causing a more dangerous situation than the highway already presents. Speaking of roundabouts, we got a little bit more time here. This is a project that you had made me more aware of, and it's actually a Grass Valley project that will be coming down the road at some point. And you're talking about a pretty large roundabout with that.
Yeah, that's correct. The Nevada County Transportation Commission had assisted the city of Grass Valley in the preparation of a grant application for the State Active Transportation Program, which is kind of primarily focused on improving bicycle and pedestrian safety and mobility. And years ago, we did an intersection control analysis right in that section of downtown Grass Valley, South Auburn, Colfax, Neal. Right within that area, you have about 7 intersection movements, multiple pedestrian crossings, and did a study to look at that in coordination with Caltrans and an engineering consultant to see what improvement could be made. And out of that study, there was a concept for, it's kind of like an oval roundabout. I wish, we had a computer screen and I could put up the animation and show the graphic. But it'll essentially eliminate a lot of those intersections and conflicts, create an oval roundabout with multiple ped crossings, a separated trail around the outside. And that project is slated to go to construction in 26-27. We're just getting the allocation from the California Transportation Commission to start the project approval environmental documentation phase. So there should be some public workshops as part of that. Grass Valley is the lead agency for that project. But it should improve. There's improved crossings right around by Grass Valley Charter, and along the roundabout there's enhanced, visually enhanced crossings with rapid reflective flashing beacons. I know the acronym.
Right, I'm sure you do.
Better than I did.
Yeah. And so there's one that's similar. I don't know if it actually qualifies as that right now at the crosswalk by Grass Valley Charter, where you have the sign on both sides. It's PED activated, and it's got the flashing beacon with a high intensity light. So those will be at multiple crossings at the roundabout. And really think it'll be a good improvement, improve safety and pedestrian and bicycle activity in that kind of key entrance to downtown Grass Valley.
Yeah, and this will all be constructed essentially beneath the freeway as it goes through town. So
it essentially curves around. You'll still have the park and ride lot underneath the highway. That's incorporated into the project, and it'll provide pedestrian access all the way around and even over to the Tinloy Transit Center, which is right off of that stretch as well.
And obviously the community will have plenty of time to hear about the project and to share their thoughts on the project. And that's something we had talked about before, is that with these projects, that is the way they go. Everybody gets a chance to be heard, that sort of thing. Another project that's local that you've been hearing a little bit about in Nevada City. You want to talk about that a little bit on? Yeah,
another project, again, that the Nevada County Transportation Commission kind of led. Essentially, we had pedestrians come to our Nevada County Transportation Commission, or concerned citizens, I should say, concerned there was a fatality of a pedestrian crossing 49 at Cement Hill Road, I think for one of the Victorian Christmas events. And there was also concerns by the residents that live off of Chief Kelly Drive with the high-speed slip off-ramp. If you're coming from the Willow or the Ridge coming into town, there's that high-speed kind of right exit ramp. And then shortly beyond that, you have the entrance to Chief Kelly Drive. And there's been a lot of near misses at that intersection, folks trying to pull out, and they voiced their concerns. So we started looking at improvements, working with Nevada County, Nevada City, and Caltrans, and even FHWA was involved, looking at that stretch from essentially where the new juvenile hall is located all the way down to the intersection at 2049 and Urin Street. And ultimately, the planning concept that was developed will eliminate that right slip ramp at Cement Hill Road, would put in a roundabout at Cement Hill Road, and have a multi-purpose trail from the juvenile hall over to essentially the roundabout at that location. And then on the Cement Hill Road side, you'll have some portions of sidewalk going up Cement Hill Road, accessing the Hirschman Pond Trail, and then a multi-purpose trail along the front of the Rood Center, And at the entrance to Maydew Avenue at the Root Center, you'll also have a roundabout at that location, and some enhanced shoulders and for pet activity. At the North Bloomfield intersection will be an enhanced crosswalk. Right now, there's only a crosswalk on the one leg of North Bloomfield. This will put enhanced visual crosswalks at all 4 legs. And then kind of going down from the North Bloomfield intersection, there'll be a multi-use trail that will also be a future connection to the Sugarloaf Mountain Trail that the Land Trust is planning. And that trail will go down to the intersection of Coyote Street. And at Coyote Street, we looked at a couple of alternatives. One was another roundabout, and the other one was a right-in, right-out alternative with a crosswalk at that location. And that's one, I think the project team and, Nevada City, knowing the funding challenges, kind of went for the lower cost alternative. And that's one where I've recently been receiving, emails and phone calls, and the residents that live up North Bloomfield, and I have some friends that live up there, not happy with the proposal to restrict it to a right-in, right-out only, not be able to make that left turn. So I just want to ensure those folks, I'm sure some of you are here, that that project, we're just getting the allocation from the California Transportation Commission to start the environmental phase of that project. And as part of that environmental phase, there'll be an opportunity for input on the conceptual design, and ultimately that input will drive the alternative that moves forward through that project. So there will be opportunity. I'm keeping all of the emails that I've been receiving, and we'll be reaching out to those folks when those public workshops are scheduled, so we make sure we get the word out to the folks that live up on North Bloomfield so they have the opportunity to come and voice those concerns. And then working with Caltrans, Nevada City, even Nevada County, we can look at that and see, given the opposition, is there an alternative that can accomplish the same thing and work for everyone? So there will be opportunity, and it's not a done deal. That's
well, I think that's something to, our community likes to be heard. they have opinions and they want to share them, and they're interested in participating. We have turnouts like this at local events talking about local issues. So it's important to not just let them know that there will be an opportunity for you to share your thoughts on the project, but also we have real life evidence of these organizations listening and trying to mitigate the issues that are raised. So I think it's great that it's part of it, and we talked before about how sometimes not everybody's going to be happy in the end, but at the same time we're moving things forward and hopefully making things safer for the community.
That's right. You can't always make everybody happy. The impacts, you have to keep the intent of the project, and the 174 widening was an operative one that really Mike and we worked multiple times with the 174 group that they had put together, and we tried to adjust and minimize impacts to the community. We typically, our standards are off of the shoulder. We're supposed to put in like a traversable shoulder slope that allows vehicles, once if they come off that shoulder, off the roadway, that they can traverse back on safely. But with the number of trees up there and how narrow it is up there, we looked at minimizing that, so we steepened up those slopes to minimize those impacts to those trees and to the right-of-way impacts, and taking less right-of-way from the local people living next door, as well as environmental impacts as well. So we too try to minimize and help out and minimize those impacts to the locals, but again, you won't please everybody.
Yeah, and for that project on 174 that Sam's mentioning, that was a safety project where the number of accidents and the densities, triggered the safety funding. So they're somewhat constrained because Caltrans then has to respond with an improvement that, they identify will reduce those, injury or run off the road accidents. In the case of the project in the State Route 49 corridor for the Coyote Street improvement, that's not the case. We're trying to improve pedestrian, bicycle mobility, and also, operations, hopefully slowing speeds through the corridor. But, there's definitely opportunity through the environmental process to have that input and, drive kind of what is that ultimate improvement at Coyote, what does the community want to see, and what can work for all the jurisdictions involved. So just want to make that clear.
Well, this has been a lot of information in a very short amount of time, and I really appreciate you two coming, in particular, to talk about it, because your experience with our community, your knowledge of all the projects in the past, really, people have questions with you or for you. I know that you'll be able to answer them, and I do want to let you know that if you do have questions afterward and you like to talk with Mike and Sam, they're going to stick around for a while to do so. But before we go, I wanted to just ask, when you're not out making our highways safer, and pleasing some people, what do you like to do for fun? I know we just found out you play guitar.
Yeah, I like to paddleboard, and then I'm also a professional disc golfer. But I don't know if you checked my rating these days,
No,
I
not.
probably am no longer qualified as a professional because I don't have much time to get out and play like I used to. But yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I have 6 grandchildren, so I love, obviously I have 4 boys, so with those grandchildren, you really get to spend the time that you wish you would have taken with your other children, and so really makes it worthwhile. But other than that, I love hiking, I love biking, I mountain bike, road bike as well, and occasionally get to go out and play a round of golf or two.
Very good. Well, all that can be done right here in Nevada County for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'd just like to ask you all to thank these two for joining us. And thank you for coming.
How about audience input?
You can ask for questions. They're going to stick around and answer your questions.
You addressed Coyote and Bloomfield. You didn't talk about the part that's 49 and 20 split.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the 4029 Urin Street intersection, in our planning study that we did in 2019, we did look at that and identify some conceptual improvements. One of them was a large roundabout. When we applied for our grant funding, the cost of that roundabout was outside of the funding possibilities for that grant. So really, that's a project that will, need to be funded through Caltrans Safety or Caltrans State Highway Operations Protection Program. And just last week, I was talking with Caltrans District 3 Safety Department, and they're going to be doing an additional analysis kind of based off that concept that we came up with to see what are the alternatives, what can be done at that intersection, because we have had those multiple accidents with folks making that left turn that are fairly serious accidents with the speeds of the folks coming down the hill. So that's something that we're exploring. Again, that's a larger cost improvement, and so really it starts to get outside of our funding ability. So we have to work with Caltrans.